I'm going to start, because this is about getting started. And the reason that I picked this week, because I wasn't sure what the topic was going to be, and I was sort of kicking around a few ideas like gut instincts and faith as well, which I think I'll come to at some other point. But I couldn't think of what there was to say about that at this point. And then I thought, what have I been struggling with this week? And what I've been struggling with is getting started on something. I'm supposed to be writing up an idea for a TV show, and I've been putting it off for months. And there's been reasons and reasons and reasons. But at the end of the day, I have been putting it off. And there's almost been a part of me this week that's brought in other things to do in the guise of being organized. But actually, I was putting off getting started, and I was like, yeah, getting started is actually really difficult. Why do people find it so hard? So I thought maybe this is, this is the next topic to discuss, is like getting started and why that's so difficult and how we can transform that experience. So, one of the things I thought of when I was thinking of what it means to get started is that it is an act of faith. It's a massive leap into the unknown, and I think that's why it can be so intimidating, so scary, so off-putting, or whatever the reason, whatever the sort of emotional experience that we have when we think about sort of getting started. But it is a massive act of faith, because you don't know really what you're doing, you don't know what you're letting yourself in for, you don't know what's on the other side of it, and actually you don't know who you will be as a result of undertaking whatever this task is, because everything we do that's new creates a new being on the other side. You are not the same person you were when you started. You're not the same person when you finish as when you started. So for example, with this book I've been writing, I'm not the same person as when I started, because from writing the book, I wouldn't have known this at the time when I sort of embarked on it, but in writing the book, I got some insights about my own life, because I'm using, stories from my own life in the book. I have learned about writing books, which information that I didn't have at the beginning, and I learned through doing. So you're really taking a leap of faith, and it creates an experience called scary. It isn't scary, but the ego is desperate to try and keep everything the same. It doesn't want things to change. The ego's job is to keep things safe, and the way that it knows to keep things safe is to keep them the same. And that's why starting something, because you're ushering in change, that's why it can create this experience called scary. But I think it helps us to distinguish between something actually being scary and something creating an experience that we identify as scary. Because I don't know, like base jumping is scary. that's something that I think we can all agree is scary. Or glass-bottomed elevators, or whatever. No, that's probably not a good example, because I think that's more of an example of the other thing I'm talking about. But do you know what I mean? Like, being confronted with a frightening animal, a shark or something, that's all scary. But getting started gives us the same emotional experience of that, but it isn't actually scary, because we're talking about writing a book, or doing a painting, or starting a course or something like that. That you're not under attack, but your body experiences it like there is some perceived threat or danger. So I think it's good for us to distinguish when we're experiencing, but it's scary and I don't know how it's going to be received, and what if nobody likes my paintings or photography or my book or whatever. That's not getting attacked by a saber-toothed tiger scary. That's just the ego doing its job of trying to keep everything the same by giving you lots of reasons not to start. So I thought of some of the reasons why we tell ourselves, or what gets in the way and creates this scary, I'm scared feeling, when it comes to starting any project, any creative project, but just any project anyways, I think, that is taking you out of the known. And I think creative projects do that more than, because what just popped into my head is, what about if you were going to redecorate a room? Well, that's not really taking you out of it's taking you into the unknown, because it's just going to be a different color. Like, creative projects are literally something from nothing, and I think that's why that's the distinction, I think. Yeah. So some of the things that I think get in the way or create this experience of being scared or whatever is that we have this perfect vision. I'm just going to go through the list and then I'll break it down and sort of we can talk about it in more detail. So we have a perfect vision of what we think this creative project we're embarking on, what it's going to be like, and we're not sure that we can match that once we start to commit pen to paper, paintbrush to canvas. We've romanticized the process and the product. So in our minds, we've imagined that we're like Picasso in a studio and there's paint everywhere on the walls and we're just like free, we've romanticized this whole thing and it's going to be hung in galleries all around the world. And even after I'm dead, people are going to be paying millions of dollars or pounds for my work. We've romanticized it. We're scared of the hard work as well. Like, we and that comes as part of the romanticizing thing, is that sometimes getting started and continuing, not just getting started but continuing the process is not fun, or anticipating the anticipation of what that process is going to be like. It creates this experience of like, it's not going to be fun. You don't know whether it's going to be fun or not because you haven't done it yet, you haven't started yet, but we tell ourselves, oh, it's going to be graft, it's going to be grind. The other thing is there's no immediate reward, which also links to it being hard work and not being fun. Is like, if you had a choice between, binge watching Lost, which is what I'm doing at the moment, and working, but sort of binge watching Lost, or getting on and doing the hard work that you need to do. It's like, no immediate reward with doing the hard work. Immediate reward with Lost, because I get to find out what happens next. So, Oh, hang on, what have I done here? I missed your comments. I thought that there weren't any comments, and I thought, well, normally people are quite chatty. Steve says I'd have $12. Okay, all right, good. Hi, Tony. Hi, Gwynnifer. Hi, Asha. We will get to face, Steve. Don't you worry about that. Hi, Danielle. Joaquim. I've lost my pronunciation of it because of the summer break. I've forgotten how to pronounce it. Mandy, hey, what's up? Ryan, Sammy Irish, Hannison, hey, how's it going? And Steve says, can you give us a specific example of how the book changed you? I hope I answered that by saying the things about, learning how to write a book, insights about my own life. It's not huge monumental shifts, but for sure, like, I am a different person as a result of having written that book or writing that book. Tony says the brain operates by default in a safe mode. Absolutely. And some might argue that it's the ego, or is it just the brain wiring, the brain sort of chemistry or biology, or I don't know. But there is definitely this ego entity at work that is wedded to keeping things nice and safe. So Asha says it's a really interesting observation that the ego likes to keep things safe. That's just kind of how it goes, and also we demonize the ego in the way that we talk about it, but actually, we would all have been mowed down by trucks and, found ourselves in really dodgy situations if the ego weren't doing its job. It's just that sometimes we need to be able to override it, and sometimes we need to listen to it. And when it comes to something like walking down a dark alley at night, we need to listen to the ego. When it comes to starting a creative project where it's still trying to initiate those same safety mechanisms, we need to just go, okay, I got this, let me take over. And it's not to try and, because sometimes when people are talking about the ego and the mind, they talk about trying to control it and stop it. And I don't think that's the way to deal with the ego and the mind. The way to deal with it is to transcend it. So allow it to do what it does. It is just literally a process in action, and it doesn't need to be curtailed. In fact, I don't want to get too far into the long grass with this, but it needs to be given its space to be. Otherwise, you strengthen it by trying to control it. You just need to allow it, but not be of it. All right? So next to, hey, Adam and I Draw People Naked. Welcome back. John Wells, what's up? Judith, hey. Hey, how's it going? So where was I? Okay, so yeah, we were just going through this list. So we have a perfect vision, we've romanticized it, and now I've caught up with your comments. That makes more sense. Yes, okay, so now I'll see them as they come up. Okay. Perfect vision, romanticized it with imagining it's hard work, we're not feeling a reward. Sometimes we imagine the whole mountain when we think of a project that we've got to take on, rather than just like small chunks. We see this whole mountain, it looks so intimidating that we don't even bother starting. Self-doubt kicks in, and all the myriad of things. Everyone's got their own script for what their self-doubt looks like, but we basically all have that same mechanism going on in our heads. And then we also have an issue around the outcome. Like, even if we get through all this, we're imagining this is at the start of the process, like well then what if no one, you know, so there's all those things, like, so it is not a small thing to start a project. And that's why I was kind of excited when I thought of this topic, because I thought, actually, this is quite a big deal. Because when I first wrote down, okay, let me try talking about getting started, I thought, well, what is there to say? But actually, as I sort of drilled down into it, I saw that there was so much to it, because it's such a big deal. You are creating a new realm, a new paradigm, a new you through getting started in this process. And I think that's why it is such, because I Googled like getting started, and there were so many articles, or how to get started, or why is it so hard to get started. There's so many articles and blogs and, you know, all kinds of things. So it is not a small thing. So if you are feeling like intimidated by the idea of starting a process, you do yourself a favor and just give yourself the space to say that's normal, because it is, because otherwise people wouldn't be writing so much about it, and otherwise when I drilled down into it, I wouldn't have found so much to say about it. It's a big deal. Enoch, hey, welcome to the conversation. So let's go back and look at, oh, hang on, this is not in order. Okay, so let's look at like some of the specifics around that, so that we can sort of dismantle it a little bit and just make getting started, see the process of getting started for what it is. I Draw People Naked said that was important to hear. Fantastic. And Rahimuddin02 has joined the conversation. Welcome to the conversation. So, first of all, the perfect vision and the romanticizing of the process and the product. I think this is probably one of the biggest problems with getting started, is that I sort of got into the sort of mechanics of this for myself, because I was thinking, when I think of a project for myself, I can see it perfectly. I can see the Emmys on my mantelpiece. I can see, you know, Viola Davis in the lead. I can see it's all perfect. Gaz Khan, Wagwan. All right. Oh, and Ian says, I get what you mean. I keep telling myself, you can't write, you're a chef. Maybe you're both. Yeah, so I can see this project all perfect. It's all perfect. It's going to be great. Will Smith will probably do television again, just for the thing that I've written. And so the idea of starting feels like, as soon as you take this perfect being that's kind of sort of out there nebulously in the world, but in your brain, sort of in the world, as soon as you have to commit that to paper, it's going to be rubbish. That's what I tell myself. It's going to be rubbish. How on earth can I, a mere mortal, take this enormous thing that's got Viola Davis and Will Smith in the lead roles and get that onto paper so that people can see it and make it? I'm not going to be able to do it, so I won't start. So, because if I don't start, then it'll always be perfect. Now, that's my version of it. You've probably got your own version of, it's perfect in my mind, and if I start, it will not be perfect. So, because we've romanticized the whole idea of this process, of this thing that we want to create. So, the first thing we need to get around all of that is your first version, your first attempts, plural, will be shit. Okay? They will be shit, but that's great, because you can always make something that is terrible better. If there's nothing, you can't do anything. But if there's a terrible version, if there's a terrible draft of a script, a draft of a book, a version of a painting, you can always make it better. I remember at school copying a drawing. I don't know why, but there was a hand-drawn picture in the Radio Times of Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd, because moonlighting was really big at the time. And I copied this drawing. And when I first finished it, I thought, oh, that's pretty good. It pretty much looks like the thing. the picture in the Radio Times. And then a couple of weeks later, I opened up my art book and I thought, they look, you know, when you see those terrible pictures of like fan art that don't actually look like the person, that's what this looked like. And for some reason, I'd had another go at doing this picture and it was much better. So I'd given myself, unwittingly, I'd given myself the experience of seeing how the first version was terrible, but doing another version and improving. So there's always improvements that can be made. But once we let go, so this is why it's an act of faith. Once we let go of the idea that the first version of it has to be great, or if the first version isn't great, then it will never be great. Once we let go of that, then we're free to create in a way that is more mature and grown up, and allow something real to exist. And who knows, maybe the version that you create when you get started is even better than the one that you had in your mind. But unless you give it a chance to breathe, air, exist, how on earth could you possibly know? All you've got is this nebulous nothing otherwise, unless you get started. And to get started, you have to accept that the first version will be awful. And who knows, it might not actually turn out to be awful, but when you accept that it could be, then you're free to do it. And then when you see that actually that's not so bad. That actually does look like George Michael, or, whatever it is that you're trying to create. You're just like, you've given yourself the freedom to be in this process rather than thinking it must be perfect or nothing at all. I'm going to go back to your comments. Tony says, without over glamorizing the ego, it's basically an encapsulation of all that's been put into us from birth. The minute we start challenging those status quos, you're parting a new way from the norm. Absolutely, that's exactly it. You're stepping into the unknown. You're creating a new version of something, of yourself, of your understanding of who you are, of everything. I Draw People Naked says that is so real. I am D. Seal has joined, and Nick, welcome. Steve says that thinking process is what got me through my dissertation. You can always improve, but you cannot improve when there is nothing to improve upon. Exactly. So, and also, ideas want to exist. They want to exist. Ideas are out there, trying to find a person to be birthed through. And so you don't want to get in their way by going, yes, but you're not, if I do it, it won't be perfect. Don't get in the way of these ideas that are desperate to be. Liz Gilbert talks about this in her book, Big Magic, which is a fantastic book, and I recommend it for anyone sort of just wanting some inspiration around their creativity. And she talks about ideas as these entities that are looking for an outlet, a place to be birthed. And if they can't get out through you, they'll go to somebody else. And sometimes they'll go to many people at the same time. So that's why some ideas like come up. I think there's a term for it, but I can't remember what it is. But anyway, some ideas come up in different places at the same time. And everyone thinks that was my idea. And actually, it was an idea looking for an outlet into the world to be. So don't you be getting in the way of ideas. If they come to you, respect their desire to exist and let them out. Omoteo Kinder has joined. Welcome. So that's the whole perfect vision romanticizing thing. We also get intimidated by the prospect of the hard work. And there's no two ways about it. Most creative projects are hard work, either in getting good enough to create stuff that people will want to consume, or even just the process of doing something in the first place. Like if you want to write a screenplay, if you're doing a painting, if you're writing a book, my goodness, I mean, I'm finding out that is hard work with very little reward. So you have to, the hard work is good because it is an opportunity to really have a look and see, do I really want this? Because there is no shame in going, actually, not up for it. And I really took this idea on from Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, because in it he talks about he really wanted to be like a guitar hero, and he was like imagining all his, concerts and gigs that he was going to do and screaming crowds and all that. But at the end of the day, he didn't want to put the graft in to learn to play the guitar, and so he realized, actually, I'm just in love with the idea of it. I don't want to put in the hard work. And you've really got to figure out in your life what things you want to give a shit about, what things you want to put the hard work into. And if you're finding you're procrastinating so much that you're not even getting started, then this thing is clearly not important to you. Because if it was, the doing would be more important to you than the watching Lost or, whatever form your procrastination is taking. And there's no harm in going, do you know what? I just realized I don't want to learn Spanish. I don't want to put in the time to do it, which is something I learned for myself. It's just like, I'm not into it. I'm not into spending the time that it would take to completely learn a new language. There's other things that I want to do. There's no harm in that. It's going to make it tricky when if I ever want to travel around South America or something, then I'll be sorry. But you know what I mean? You have to make these choices all the time. What's important to you? And if it's important to you, then the hard work and the sacrifice, which these things take, then it'll all be worth it. But if it is not that important to you, don't beat yourself up about it. Just abandon it. Just let that go and do the things that you do give a shit about. Okay, so I draw people naked. What's your name, by the way, if you want to say? Thank you so much. I feel like I needed to hear exactly that. Fantastic. Lydia, welcome. Hello. And Tony says, ideas are no respecters of people. If you don't acknowledge and work on them when they come, they simply go after the people that will. Exactly, Tony. And what was I going to say to that as well? It's not that they don't respect us, it's just that they're in a different realm. They're not in the linear time, three-dimensional realm that we're in. So they're okay to just go, okay, you're not feeling it. I get that. I'm gonna go to so-and-so. But they're not doing it out of a malice or anything like that. Their complete intent is to exist. And they're quite patient. But not patient in a way, patient is almost like the wrong word, because patience is something that's only really relevant in a three-dimensional linear time paradigm. They'll wait for you. I've had ideas knocking around that have been around for a long time. Equally, I've had ideas, I've had ideas that have just gone, nope, it's not going to happen here. And they've gone, or they don't even come at all anymore. Like types of, stand-up jokes and stuff, because they know that I'm sort of doing other things at the moment. So they're patient. That's not the right word to use. So it's not like, oh, quick, get it down, otherwise it won't. If it wants to come through you, it will wait. But if you're not gonna do anything about it, and you're not gonna do anything about it, it probably will go. Tonya, hi. Okay, Tonya. Tony says, absolutely, that they just want to be birthed and come into existence, totally. So the hard work, yeah. So with hard work, what also makes hard work difficult is, or not difficult, but the challenge with it is that you're doing this hard work not necessarily knowing where this whole thing is going to go. So you want to know that if you're taking a leap of faith that is going to include a degree of sacrifice and discipline, you've got to make sure it's worth it. And the way to do that, I say, is to connect back to the why. Remember, and I'll bring this up probably, more times in the future, is like, if you don't know the why, you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, why what you're doing is important, then you're kind of just working. You're just, I don't know what you're doing. I can't even describe what that is if you don't know why what you're doing is important to you or to the world, or both. So if you're feeling like I'm intimidated to start a project because it will be hard work, then go back to why on earth you would take this thing on, because it will be painful. There's no denying. It will be difficult. There will be sacrifices whereby, you're going to have to use your time in a particular way that isn't necessarily as immediately gratifying as if it's not as immediately gratifying as if you were to do this project. So you've got to make sure you're connected to the why. For me, with the book, I keep going, and I think the book's a good example because I'm still in the process of it, is the why that I connected to is I would love to see a book of mine on the bookshelf. That's the image that I go to when I'm really struggling, is just being in a Waterstones or whatever, or Barnes & Noble, and looking up on the bookshelf, and there's my book with my name and my title on the bookshelves, and being able to sign that book for people, and and also being able to still put comedy into the world, even though I'm focusing on other things at the moment, i.e. not focusing on stand-up, that I can still make people laugh. So that, when I connect back to that why, it literally, I just go, oh, and go back to work, because we all get lost in the, oh God, this is painful. But if you connect back to your why, it makes everything make sense. If you don't have a why, or the why is not real, or it's not real anymore, review the situation. Steve says, so do you think there needs to be some acceptance that the reality of the thing we produce is never going to be as good as the idea we first had of it? It's more like this. There is a possibility that this will not be what I had in mind. It doesn't mean it will not be as good. It doesn't mean that it won't be the same, but it might not be what I had in mind. But you have to trust the process, that when that whatever germ of a seed is inside of that great idea will come out in a way that is right, that is how it should be. And I think this is where the faith aspect comes in as well. Is you've got to trust this idea to be a fully formed idea that just needs you to flesh it out. And through your specific filter of existence, that's how it gets its form and shape. So if this idea were to go through somebody else, it would get a different form and shape because of the life they've lived, everything they've been through, everything they know, and everything they think. If the filter was to come through you, then it looks a particular way. So it's not going to be as good. It's just not going to be that. Or it might not be that even. It's not even like you have to believe it is not going to be that. It just might not be that. And it's more about the letting go rather than about thinking about what it will be or what it won't be. It's about letting go of that. You know, a facilitator that I really, really admire has said to us many times in these workshops that he runs, like, you can have anything you want as long as you let go of the idea of what it should look like. And it's so true. Because the minute you let go of this idea must come out looking like this, and it must have Viola Davis and Will Smith in it, the minute you can let go of that, then that allows for something different to emerge. And it may be that when you create it, Will Smith looks at this and goes, I want to be in this. But if you're wedded to this is what it must be, it will create this quicksand that you'll get caught up in, trying to get to this idea that you've created in your mind. Just walk the good walk and see where it takes you. Letting go of you can use your idea that you had in your mind obviously as your North Star, but just see where it takes you and don't let that get in the way of starting. Tonya says, for some reason I feel like I am the one who has to bring this idea out in the world, and I don't think it matters or is in any way important, but I am the one who has to do it anyways. And I think I think you have to let go of the idea of I'll come to this, but in terms of the outcome, if something is knocking on your door and saying I want to be birthed through you, maybe just give that a little bit of room and see where it takes you, regardless of the outcome. Steve says, these are ideas are bordering on the religious, another topic for another day. Yeah, I think maybe that's why the faith thing was sort of bubbling around, but I wasn't quite sure what to say. One of the other things that I wanted to share about this whole getting started thing is, like I said at the beginning, before a few people joined, that I wrote the topic getting started down, and I was like, I wasn't sure what I needed to say about that. And in the process of doing it, the ideas came. And so I said this last week, inspiration does not lead, it follows. And so, but just by the process of getting started, it generated more to say. And I kind of got into this flow state with it. And so one thing that I want to take from this, because whenever I do these talks for you guys, I always think, well, what's in there for me as well, just to make sure that I'm practicing what I preach. One thing that I really want to take on is this idea that the act of starting will create more than you can see in that moment. Because that's something that I really struggle to trust, because when I look at the process of starting, it's like, oh, it's going to be hard work and who knows where it's going to go, and I'm not going to be able to do it. But without fail, once you start, you do find yourself in this flow state where more is available than looked like it would be available when you first started the process. So again, you have to have the faith that you will engender inspiration once you start. You must start, because starting is like opening the door to inspiration. You know, I really love this idea of it being this lady who dances and only dances once you created the space in which you create the dance floor for her. And you do that by starting. She won't come in and dance if there's no dance floor, and the dance floor is you taking that leap of faith. Leap and the ground will show up underneath you. Insomnimum has joined the conversation, and Steve says, you can have anything you want, but you must let go of the idea of how to create it. It's quite simply the best thing I have heard ever. Well, I'm going to tell you, that is a man called David Norris who said that, and he says it over and over again in his workshops. If you're ever in London, look up Concord Institute. He does a lot of work through them, and he is fantastic. Joachim says, at least a really good idea for a book, maybe a scary one. Explain that. I'm not sure what that means. And Ryan says hello back again. Tony says ideas do come from the infinite intelligence around us, so we need to learn to pay attention to those little intuitive voices in our hearts. Well said, Tone. And I like the fact that you said in our hearts, not in our heads, because I think you're right about that. All right, so hard work. Okay, so that's that. The fact that getting started means gives you the perception that there's no immediate rewards, because immediate rewards you get from procrastinating. That's why one of the reasons why people do it. We've talked about procrastination before, so I won't go into detail about that again. But we all know what it looks like. And the funny thing about procrastination is, like, we can do things that look like work, but they're still procrastination. So when you get to the point where you're planning a project out of existence, when you're training so much that nothing actually ever gets started, when you're researching so much that you've got, your head is full of knowledge but your page is empty, that is a cheeky, naughty form of procrastination that the ego is using. It's going, look, but you're researching, and this is very important. It's like that woman that I told you about the other day that said that she wanted to start doing stand-up, so she's researching at the moment. It's like, girl, you gotta just do. There is no researching with stand-up that doing could not provide you with a better experience in terms of a better learning experience. So it is difficult because, there's no two ways about it. It's hard work, and sometimes it's not going to be fun. It's going to feel like graft. So one of the ways around that is to break down your process and give yourself little rewards along the way, so that you can feel some gratification, and it will feel more wholesome because you actually got the thing done that you were going to do, rather than the procrastinating instant gratification of like social media or going and watching a film instead, or whatever the things that we do instead of the thing that we said is important to us and we want to achieve. So celebrate those small crests, and don't make it a small deal. My coach that I have always says, he always drills into me, like, you've really got to take a moment to celebrate when you finish a chapter, or when you finish a draft and get that to the publisher, or whatever it is, because otherwise it is just this never-ending road of hard work with one huge sort of reward at the end. But if you reward yourself little crests along the way, like I finished a chapter, or I finished a section of my dissertation, or I finished the first, I don't know, I've done a scene breakdown for my screenplay, or whatever it is, that it will make the process so much easier, because there's rewards that you've had and there's rewards to look forward to. And you create this neuroplasticity. You change your neuroplasticity to mean that doing these things you associate with reward, rather than the procrastination type things. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that getting shit done in your brain starts to create this experience of, this will lead to reward. Yeah? So celebrate those small crests, and it will feel better than the sort of faffing, basically. There's a degree of faffing required. I always think of, when you see gymnasts do the floor routines, and we all know that they've got to do the 3 big tumbles, and they do those sort of funny little steps that they do to get into the corner so that they get the greatest distance across the floor. Well, yeah, all right, when we start a project, we do all have to do this funky little steps to get into the corner, but you've got to do the tumble as well. Because what a lot of people do is they do the little steps and they just stay there doing the little steps in the corner, and they never do the tumble. So yeah, do your little steps, faff a bit, but I want to see that triple pike, double back flip somersault, or whatever they call them. I don't know. Baxim has joined the conversation. Hello. Hello. And Joaquim says, I mean, the topic of ideas seeking outlets through us. Oh, it could be a scary book. Oh my gosh. That's not a bad idea for a book, actually. Asher says, you've done so many different things, comedy, TV, film, writing. Do you have a different approach to starting something completely new to you? No, I don't. I think probably the way to start is different depending on what it is. And like this TV treatment that I finally got around to starting this week, I think what happens is you acquire different tools along the way that if that approach doesn't work, then I'll try this. Because for this process, I decided to brainstorm on paper, and I got out some Sharpies, and this isn't it, but this is what it looked like. And I got out some different coloured Sharpies, and I thought, well, at least if it looks nice, it'll sort of stimulate my thinking. So I just brainstormed and just like freeformed and wrote down ideas. And I think really subconsciously what I was saying to myself was, don't worry about how good it comes out. And the fact that I was using scrap paper and Sharpies and, you know, bits of paper everywhere meant that I was as far from it looking good and looking right and looking like something that I can actually hand into a producer. So I was free. So in the end, I ended up with like 20 pages of, big scraps of paper with big writing all over it. And then the next day I started looking at it and picking out the bits that I wanted and writing it up. But actually, I found it I got into a bit of difficulty at one point. And so in hindsight, what I realised I was doing was I was just trying different approaches. So rather than, and I'll come to writer's block in a minute because this is something else I want to talk about, but so rather than giving up and going, oh, that's it, I don't know how to proceed, what you want to get, I guess, is an armory of approaches to get you into the starting process. And sometimes inspiration isn't going to turn up feeling and looking the way you want it to. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is going to feel like a really awesome flow state, but sometimes it is going to feel like treacle. But just stay in your seat, stay with it. So basically in answer to your question, there probably are different ways that I use to start, but, and what you want to do is have a toolkit of ways to get you in. So rather than give up, just try a different way. And Asher says, and Ian, how did you start in something completely new? So it's a question from Asher to Ian. Travelbug 12 has joined the conversation. And Tony says, celebrate each step along the way. Yep, feed your ego. I don't know if that's, maybe that is feeding the ego a little bit, but I think it's a little bit of feeding the soul as well, so that, it's, it probably is throwing a peanut to the ego, I suppose, as well, giving it the celebration. But the ego, let's not demonize, is going to be our partner in this, because it's not like we can separate ourselves from it. So I guess, maybe it is feeding the ego. Steve likes the word faffing. Very good. So another thing makes life difficult or makes getting started difficult is we see the whole mountain. We imagine, again using the book as an example, we imagine completing 80,000 words, and especially from someone who comes from writing from a screenplay perspective, there's a lot of white space on a page when you write a screenplay as opposed to a book. And the thing is about a screenplay is the audience aren't going to experience every written word as something they're going to hear. So, for example, the stage directions aren't something that they're going to hear. So if they're not particularly well written, it doesn't matter as long as the dialogue's good. That's from an audience perspective. However, with a book, the audience obviously is going to read every single word. So every single word, every sentence, every paragraph has to be great. That's a lot to do. So it's a very intimidating thing to look at the entire thing and just how the hell am I going to do that? So it can be intimidating. This is one of the many reasons why we find it hard to start. So I've said this before. Well, first of all, I say, no task ever gets done in one go. Even if you think of a meal that's put in front of you, if you don't take one mouthful of the whole thing, you take it in small bites and you savor it and you enjoy it. If it's a nice meal, you really enjoy it. And so do the same with your tasks. You know, we break them down. I've said this before, like when you're driving home on a dark road at night, you only see as far as your headlamps will illuminate, and that's like the next 20 meters. All you need to see is the next 20 meters and the next 20 meters, and that is what you'll see all the way home. That's what will get you home. So break down a project if you need to, because sometimes we've taken on something that's so massive that actually it would be too intimidating to imagine, to try and navigate your way through the whole thing. So break it down into like smaller, more manageable sizes. And I was Googling trying to get some ideas as well for this. And one blogger said that if you make your first task so small, it's almost like embarrassing to not start. So you know that thing where sometimes when people advice for people who want to start working out, sometimes they say, all right, just put on your workout gear. And that's what you do on day one. You don't work out at all. You just put on your workout gear and then take it off. And before, I thought that was ridiculous. It's like, come on, at least go for a walk or something. But that might be day 4 or 5. But they say put your workout gear on. And now I sort of see that, yeah, that makes total sense. Make it such a small, doable task, the very first step, that it'd be embarrassing not to do it. And then you do the next step, which is go outside. And then the next day, all right, now it's go for a walk. And the next day, run for a minute and then walk for the rest. And whatever it is. And from there, Ryan can probably testify this better than anybody else. From there, you end up breaking your 6-mile 10K goal. You know, we're taking 4 minutes of it. But that has to start with somewhere, which is put your kit on. One day, just put your kit on. So whatever it is you're trying to get done, make your first task, and if you're struggling with it, make your first task so small that it's like, it would feel awkward to explain why you haven't done that. It's just easy to just do it. Sam, hello Sam, has just joined the conversation. Ian says, I had a good story to tell, so I took it. Took me a year, but I finished. I think that's in response to Ash's question. And Millie Madu has joined us. I like that name, Millie Madu, trips off the tongue. So, do a small task that you can't, that's too embarrassing not to do. All right, so self-doubt, what are we going to do about that? So, the ego presents us with many, many compelling arguments as to why we shouldn't do what we've set out to do. Like I said earlier, it's not about squashing that down, defeating it. You know, we're not in battle with our ego, because the ego is part of us and it's an important part of us, and we can't distinguish ourselves from it. We can't extract it from us, as it were. We can't become two different things. We're always going to have it with us. So let's befriend it. Let's find a way to just go, cool, I hear you, but here's what's actually going to happen. So don't worry. You know what your noise is. Like all the words that come up in your mind, it's too difficult. What do I know? I haven't enough training. I don't have enough resources. I won't be very good. My mum, doesn't think I'm very good at it. Whatever it is your noise is, you know what they are. No worries. But, we've all seen these Nike adverts going around. Just do it. You don't need to diminish anything your ego is saying. You can just go, cool, I got it. I know why you're saying that. Because remember that time in school when you failed and you've made that mean da-da-da-da-da about your life? Well, cool, I got it. But this is still going to happen. Here's what's going to happen, right? And again, like when the self-doubt creeps in, reconnect with your dream, your goal, your why. Why is this even happening? Why are you even putting yourself through this? Because most people don't. Most people don't start again. Don't start things that are like this, that are scary to them. So like I said at the beginning, it's a big deal. So staying connected to the why you are doing it will make pushing through the self-doubt, pushing through this is hard work, pushing through fear much, much easier, and it will make sense as well. So it won't be some, I don't know, like you will be able to own it, basically. You'll be able to own your choice to be in this question of yourself by taking on this task that you that is going to change you, transform your experience. So catch yourself. I wrote self in capital letters. So catch yourself, i.e. catch your ego doing what it does. Don't reprimand it. Don't make it bad. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just catch it. Then get on with it. Because all it's trying to do is keep you safe. Okay, so self-doubt, writer's block. I put that under that top banner just because I'm going to say this a lot, actually. And I think I may have said this before, but writer's block doesn't exist. It is not a thing. It's a made-up thing that people without deadlines talk about. If you have deadlines, you don't get writer's block. What writer's block is not that you have the inability to write. It's not that you physically can't write something. And this applies. Use your discipline, your industry, and then the word block. So a painter's block, photographer's block, or whatever. It all applies. Writer's block is just that you don't think that what you're going to write is any good. So you tell yourself you can't write. But that only happens when you don't have a deadline. If someone's breathing down your neck and says, I want this draft by blah, 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 you better believe that you'll find a way to make it happen. And look, there's ways around writer's block. Like I said, you look for different ways in to be able to create what you want to create, or you get help. You say to someone, listen, I'm feeling a bit stuck around this. This is what I want to do with my characters, or this is what I want to do with this piece of work. What do you think? And help somebody else dislodge whatever stuck energy there is. There's writer's stuck. Now that's different from writer's block. It's not like writer's block is what people say, there's no more ideas. There's ideas, you just don't know how to execute them. So get help, get unstuck. And self-doubt can get in the way with all of that, telling you, well, you're not a very good writer anyways, and you haven't had enough training, and you're not very experienced, blah, blah, blah. So get yourself unstuck, get help with that. Get someone on board, get partnership with somebody, or just something that will help to clear that energy. Because that's all it is. It's writer's stuck, it's not writer's block. And then outcome. So that's the last, to me, the other big thing that can get in the way of getting started is that we don't know what the outcome is going to be. We don't know whether it's going to be any good, what we produce. We don't know how it's going to be received. We don't know if it's going to be successful. We don't know if it's going to generate any income. There's so many variables and unknowns, and that makes it really hard, because you're like, well, God, what if I go through all of this and nobody reads my book, nobody buys my book? What if I go through all of this and no gallery wants to hang my painting? What if I don't sell that script? What if nobody wants to buy my illustrations? What if there's no home for my music? What if even Spotify won't take me? Do you know what I mean? All these things. And again, it comes back to this leap of faith. You have to let go of where it is supposed to, where the journey ends. You know what your North Star is, but you got to trust that the product itself is defining the journey end as you go. And if you try and force your idea of where it's supposed to go on, you might end up, it's like, sometimes people talk about how, I'm not going to get the right words for this, but how, it's more of a Christian sort of thing, but how you think you know more about where you need to get to than God does. And it's almost like, you exchange God for whatever is more comfortable for you, like universe or whatever, but the universe has your back. It's not going to lead you into quicksand. You have to trust that this thing that you are allowing to exist through you is not going to lead. It's going to lead you to where it needs to get to. If you're sort of willfully trying to make it go this way and it wants to go that way, it's like when you've got a dog on a lead and the dog wants to go. Sometimes you've got to just follow the dog. This is where we're going. I mean, obviously, when you're trying to get back home, you don't want to tell the dog where to go. But sometimes you got to allow a little bit and allow this thing to define the journey a little bit. Because if you've ever written, sometimes don't you find that the characters start to tell you what's next? Yes, you have a framework in which you want to go, but sometimes the characters start to, or maybe, I don't know, maybe even when you're painting or something. Carly's not here today, so she could have spoken more to it, but that maybe sometimes paintings reveal themselves rather than that you impose an idea into the canvas, that the painting it exposes itself. Sam, if you're on here, maybe you could speak to that, because I know Sam has started painting. Ian says, very daunting, but yes, I knew the story was a good one. Listening to these live shows has been a great help and inspiration. She's not bad, this wow, thank you very much. Asher agrees, that's very sweet. And Tony says, may I humbly suggest 2 good books for today's topic? 1, Simon Sinek's Start With Your Why, and Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth for Understanding the Ego. Very good suggestions. I know I've read A New Earth. I haven't read the other one, but guys, there's a great book suggestion from Tony. Simon Sinek, Start With Your Why. I like the sound of that. Steve says, Aristotle spoke of the marble revealing the statue. Yes, that's right. That's right. I've heard that definition before. Maybe it was to do with something else. But yeah, the out of the block of clay or marble or whatever it is, or stone, that the sculptor is revealing the statue or sculpture within, rather than imposing it onto the marble. So that's what you want to do with your work. There was one other thing that I wanted to say, actually, just about it was just about the planning thing, because I've talked about planning a lot, and it does feel like a very head activity. I think the importance of that stuff is that it is giving. A plan is not just a roadmap of what you want to try and achieve. It's also a context. So when you give creativity context, it actually helps it. It doesn't hinder it. So people who aren't really planners, just consider the fact that the plan gives you a context in which you can freely be creative. Because I think sometimes people think, I'm not really a planner, I just like go with the flow, and it just seems, yeah, well, how's that working out for you? Because the plan is not a way of curtailing you. The plan is a way of giving you containment, safety. That's a nice compromise with the ego, actually, is a plan. Or the head, the mind. The mind, I think, is probably more more true, is that the mind wants some context, and a plan gives you a context. By this date, this will be done. Thy will be done. The good hombre has joined. Hello. All right. So, okay, outcome. So basically, letting go of what this thing will look like when it's finished, and also in the context of the outcome, and tagging on to the being a pro conversation last week. Create something else, so that you're not so wedded to the outcome that this is my one and only project, and if this doesn't sell, then I've got nothing. Create again. Give yourself expand your capacity to start again, because if you want to become a pro, or you are a pro and want to maintain your career, you are going to be constantly starting again, and you want to learn to to strengthen that ability, that muscle, to be able to start again. You want to become a start again master, because at the end of the day, to become a professional in your field will mean looking at many, many blank canvases, many empty screens, many SD cards with nothing on them, or whatever it is your medium. So get used to it. Rather than be scared of it, get used to it, lean into it. Look for those opportunities where you can start again. Your failures will be your friends, because they'll be your learnings for the next experience, and starting again won't even hurt you, won't even be a thing for you. But don't think that because you've started one project that's it, that's the only starting again. You need to get used to the idea that if you're going to be a pro in whatever field you're going into, starting again is going to be one of the biggest parts of your working life. You'll be constantly starting anew. So you might as well lean into it. And also, so just a couple of just things to tie that all up. Travelbug12 says, I struggle to be more structural with my writing. It's all highly generative and no order. Any suggestions of how to find a starting point? Okay, so struggle with to be more structural with my writing. So do you plan? Do you map out what you're writing? I don't know what it is you're writing, but what I find is, and also what you might want to do is dance between the two to start to build up your sort of structural muscles. So you might want to dance between planning and writing, and be, the generative freeform writing and planning and writing. So I don't know what it is you're writing, but you might want to sort of just map out a vague idea of what you want the shape of it to be, and then go back to a little bit of generative writing, and then refine your plan a little bit more, and see if you can pour your writing into that plan. Like, do chapter 1 this week, and then by the end of next week I'll have chapter 2 finished. And then so then you're sort of dancing between the two, rather than feeling like shit, I've got to sit down for 2 days and come up with this plan, which is going to be really tedious and boring. I don't know if that helps. I mean, yeah, it's hard to say without knowing what it is you're doing, but at the end of the day, you can't start in the wrong place, because sometimes people start in the middle, sometimes people write the end. So it's not like you have to begin at the beginning. You can start anywhere, and sometimes starting in the middle of something will inform what the beginning would look like anyways, and give you a more solid beginning than if you'd started at the beginning, if that makes sense. So so maybe your concern is finding the right starting point rather than just starting. And if you plan out what your writing looks like, you will be providing yourself with, this is the context that I'm talking about, you'll provide yourself with the context in which your generative writing can be poured. Thank you. I am writing a help book, so I just wrote what's in my head. I now have the content, but just want to sure how to find which, but should be the start. Oh, I see, where the start should be. Got it. Well, I think you can play around with it. There's no right way. Just play around with it and see what happens. Tony says, in terms of writing, isn't it easier to have a topic or title and then write down from that perspective? Yeah, it depends how your mind works, Tony. And I think that's what the issue here is with Travel Bug, is that everyone's mind works differently. So everyone's going to have their own access into how to create and shape their projects. So you might, that might work for you, but that might not work for Travel Bug 12. So I guess it's a case of dancing with it and finding what works for you, because that's the other thing, is each project, as I think Asha pointed out, is going to be different. You're going to take a different approach to it, and you'll start to find your way of making that work. Ian says, John Irving, my favorite author, will only start a novel when he has the last sentence. Amazing, I love that. All right, guys, so listen, run out of time. So the last things I wanted to say were create a routine, because then you'll create a habit for yourself in terms of what you're doing. And jump concerned, jump afraid, jump unknowing, jump doubtful, but jump, because it is a leap of faith to start something. And all the things that I've said, if you take all those on, then it won't be quite so intimidating. And just remember that the act of starting will generate more than you can currently see at the beginning. Yeah. Oh, one quote. Will Smith said, "Everything you desire is on the other side of your fears." And so I just wanted to end there, because I think that's exactly the place to be, to encourage you to make that leap of faith. Throw your hat over the wall. Jump afraid. All right, guys. Hi, John Peg. I've literally just finished. But thank you, everyone, for being here, and I will see you all next week.